USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Game of the Week podcast from USCHO.com. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly. And this week's Game of the Week finds Mercyhurst traveling for a pair at number 20 Arizona State.
And we will bring in our first guest of the season on the Game of the Week podcast, Mercyhurst head coach Rick Gotkin. His Lakers traveling this weekend out to Tempe, Arizona to take on number 20 Arizona State. Rick, great to talk to you as usual. Second season in a row, we realize that we're starting the year with the Lakers. Last year you hosted the Icebreaker, this time a big road trip for your club. So welcome back, and always nice to have you to start the season.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ed. You know what? It's always it's a great time of year, like you said, for all of us involved in college hockey. It's exciting. Everybody has high hopes, and everybody's excited, and everyone's looking forward to get started here.
Rick, just like Ed and I, you've been around this game for a long time, and we don't have to go that far back. That it used to be that teams would go through their training camp. They'd maybe have an inter-squad scrimmage not too long after they got on the ice. Then they'd maybe have an exhibition game, maybe take a couple of weeks off, and then they'd start their season. A lot of teams now just jumping right into it. First day you can play a game. A lot of these teams, including yourself, starting the season as soon as you can. What's some of the reasoning behind how things have changed in the last 10 years?
Well, you know what, Jim, it's funny you say that. We've done this on and off, like you said, for a number of years. One year we opened up at Michigan, the first game, the first day you could start, early October. One year we hosted Colgate here. I can tell you really in my 32 years, I really haven't seen a great difference from practicing for 4 or 5 weeks to playing that game as opposed to just, using your 3-4 hours a week. And then playing a real meaningful game. So there really hasn't been a great difference. I think everyone's a little bit amped up, in the sense that we're playing for real. It's not an exhibition game. We're not dressing, 35 guys. So I just think it's a great way, at least for us, from our perspective, to get the year going, and certainly to go down to a beautiful place like Tempe and to face a really good hockey team like Arizona State. I think will be a real good baptism for a lot of our young guys.
I hear a lot of coaches tell me that sometimes they really like to get that first long road trip. Maybe for some teams it might be their only long road trip of the year. I know you've got a league opponent in Air Force, and you bus out a lot, some of these 9-hour trips. But, get on the road, get on a plane, get the team together away from the campus right away. Does that, in your mind, in your experience, help maybe galvanize a team, maybe bring it together, find some of that unity that coaches search for, as early as they can get it?
Absolutely, Jimmy. You know what? Getting the team together and bonding off campus is big. We've purposely scheduled our 6 non-conference games back to back in consecutive. Well, I guess we have a bye week, but our first 6 are all non-conference games. 2 here with Arizona State. Then we come home next weekend and we play St. Lawrence University here. Then we have a weekend off and we play Ohio State here. So then we travel to Bentley and we start league play. But we thought with only having 8 upperclassmen and having 11 freshmen, we really thought that, let's see what we have, and let's see what we have against good out-of-conference opponents, and let's try to get on the road early. And it so happens it worked out where Arizona State was kind enough to help us figure it out, and I know our guys are excited.
You're going to play an Arizona State team pretty new to college hockey, most would say, but not new to success. And that's a team that last year, I think, maybe opened some people's eyes, maybe for others that had played them in the past seasons, understood that was a team with a lot of potential. But they go to a national tournament last year. They've had some losses. They brought in some new players, but you have to believe what Greg Powers has done down there is pretty impressive. And this might be a flash in the pan, but there's more of a higher odds that this is a team that could be there on the national picture for a while. What are your thoughts heading into a weekend against a team like Arizona State?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, we, just like most of the college hockey world, have great respect for the job Greg has done down there. He's got a great program. Obviously, Arizona State University is a major university in the nation. They play big-time athletics. I think if anybody was wondering if they would play big-time hockey or not, I think they've certainly proven that they're all in. They have a great commitment. And you're right. I mean, I would suspect they're going to be a top team this year. I would suspect they're going to be a top team going forward for a number of years. And, it's going to be a great experience for us to go out with a young team and to play against a team like Arizona that I think will probably be raising a banner of some kind, an NCAA tournament banner. And again, for our guys, it's going to be all about getting some really good experience.
We'll continue with more with Mercyhurst head coach Rick Gotkin.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
We're talking with Rick Gotkin, head coach at Mercyhurst. They're on the road this weekend to take on Arizona State. You mentioned 11 rookies, 8 of them forwards. What are some of the challenges with such a large rookie class?
Well, you know what? I think we had a little bit of an inter-squad scrimmage here yesterday, and it's just the whole pace of college hockey for these guys. They're all, and they all have great potential, and I think some of those guys will reach that potential quicker than other guys. But you know what? They seem to be a very hard-working group. I think they just have to get used to playing college hockey. They have to just get used to the fast pace. They have to get used to the strength of the guys they have to play against. They have to get used to the way the game is officiated. And college hockey, as you know, it's frantic. It's a hectic game. You have to be able to make plays under pressure. You have to be able to play through chaos. And I think for a lot of our young guys, that's going to be the biggest adjustment for them.
Is the speed of the college game that much of a jump for these guys now?
I think it is, and it's interesting because, we've had this conversation, but it feels to me like the freshman class seems to be more prepared every year. And I think the credit goes to the junior coaches and the prep school coaches and the various coaches that are coaching these kids because they seem better coached. They know more about strength and conditioning. They know more about nutrition. They know the importance of getting sleep and proper rest. So it just feels like every freshman class just seems to be a little bit more prepared than the one before. And I think for a lot of the guys, it's just, getting used to the pace. Like our pace of practice has been really, really good. The short 4 hours a week we've had since class has started here. But it's been really good. As much as we try to create game game-like environment, there's really nothing like the game. And I think that's going to be the biggest adjustment for our young people.
Taking a look at Atlantic hockey, and I know it's a few weeks before you get into league play, but when it was time for you guys as coaches to do your coaches poll, I'm sure that was one of the hardest things with a pencil and paper and moving stuff around. The league is so tight and so good. How do you even handicap where everybody's going to be?
Well, you know what, Ed, I think, if you looked at it, I think it looks almost like the way the teams finished last year, give or take a little bit, and, you look at a team like Mercyhurst. So last year we, around January, we were sniffing around first place, and then we finished the year 6-4, and that included 2 playoff games against Army, 2 losses here against Army, but like you said, it is so tight. Our league, if it's anything, and it's a great league, as you know, it's the parity is incredible. Every night is an absolute battle. The days of one team dominating, I think, are long gone. The days of teams coming in and just playing okay and winning, I think, are long gone. I think, it's really hard to win every single night in our league. And if you win, you know what? You've played really, really well because the team you just beat played really, really well. I mean, the league is really that tight. And again, I think this year is going to be another toss-up. It's going to be a battle top to bottom. And I think that's what makes it fun.
One of the other things that's been improving around the league is facilities. And you folks did a pretty major renovation over the offseason to the Mercyhurst Ice Center. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know what? We our biggest thing that we did was we were changed all the refrigeration. So we have all completely new refrigeration. We have NHL caliber ice now. We have brand new real glass. We have state of the art boards, dashboard system. We have 2 new benches, home and away, new penalty benches. The rink's been painted. There's some new signage and advertising. It looks great. And really, Brad Davis, our new athletic director, who's been on the job just over a year now, was able to raise a lot of money in a short time. And he has this broken down to about 2 or 3 phases. This was the first phase, and probably the most important phase. The next phase might be at the far end, some new offices and maybe a luxury box or 2. And things like that. So, Brad has done a great job here in a short time. And I think when people see the rink, they're going to be very impressed.
We are talking with Mercyhurst head coach Rick Gotkin. This week's game of the week will be out in Tempe, Arizona. It will be number 20 Arizona State hosting Mercyhurst. And Rick, as you mentioned Atlantic hockey, the competitiveness in the league. It does seem that college hockey is about to undergo yet another shakeup. The Big Ten did that, a number of years ago, and there was the NCHC came out of that. It does seem that there's some NCHC and WCHA teams that are maybe looking to form some hockey around the Great Lakes. I look at Mercyhurst right on Lake Erie, and that kind of somewhat falls into that category. I know that you've all done nothing but praise Atlantic hockey over the years, but given the opportunity, is that something your school would be in a position to consider?
You know what, Jimmy? Obviously, you've known me for a long time. I can't speak for Brad Davis. I can't speak for Michael Victor, our college president, or Lawrence Zirkle, our vice president. But I can tell you there's a great commitment here for hockey. We actually love Atlantic hockey. I haven't heard anybody say we're leaving Atlantic hockey anytime soon. But I do agree with you. Obviously, the landscape is changing. Who knows how these dominoes are going to fall? I think, and again, I can't speak for our administration, but I think we would certainly listen. If there was some possibilities around Lake Erie, around the Great Lakes Conference, or whatever it may or may not be called, would we actually go? That I have no idea. But I think Mercyhurst, since I've been here for 32 years, we've always had our ears open. We've always listened. That doesn't mean we've done everything. And again, I think it has to be the right fit. It has to be the right fit, whatever league that ends up becoming. And then it has to be a right fit for Mercyhurst University. And I think the timing has to be good. So, I'm not trying to really duck the question because nobody really knows what's going to happen, even though I think we all agree that we've been waiting for that other shoe to fall since the Big Ten was formed. Geographics are important. And again, I think you're right. I think if you look at a map and you look at schools that are playing ice hockey at the Division I level, you can see a cluster of schools that sit around the Great Lake of Lake Erie. And who knows where a Mercyhurst may or may not fall into that equation.
Last time we did get to speak on this podcast, Rick, was late January last year. You were the game of the week against the team that ended up becoming the Atlantic Hockey Champion, was AIC. But a big reason we did that was a weekend where your school did a great fundraiser for cancer awareness. Mike Folga, your longtime equipment manager at that time, was battling cancer. This summer, we all learned that he succumbed to the disease. He meant a lot to the game, and obviously what your school and AIC, who had a player themselves battling cancer, the two schools did so much that weekend. And since then, I've looked at, social media. Both schools continue to try to bring awareness and raise money. Just talk a little bit about maybe Mike Folga, but everything else that your school has been able to accomplish to battle that horrible disease of cancer.
Yeah, Jimmy, I appreciate you bringing that up. And, Folks has been a great friend to so many of us, you and Ed included. And, certainly, Mike Folks has been the face of Mercyhurst hockey for 20 years. I mean, he is a great man. And as you know, we lost a great man in Mike. But, he fought right to the end. He did it with grace. He did it with dignity. He was fighting a very, very tough opponent. But right to the end, the Saturday before he passed, I saw him on that Friday. We spent a little time, and he had told me that he'd see me in overtime. And I told him, I hope it's not for a while, Fogey. And he kind of smiled a little bit. But two of the biggest events we ever had here at the Mercyhurst Ice Center all were surrounded by Mike Folger. The year we brought the Stanley Cup, or the NHL brought the Stanley Cup on campus, for Mike Folger to finally get his day with the cup was unbelievable. We played Bentley that night. The rink was packed. The campus was packed. The cup was on campus all day Saturday. We raised a ton of money for different charities doing that. And then, unfortunately, the event we didn't really want to have was a fundraiser for Mike and his family against AIC. We were also able to recognize Rick Gotkin, the young man that was battling his fight, and I think he's doing pretty well, thank God, at AIC. And again, we packed the place. We raised over $40,000 that went directly to Mike Folger and his family, and over $10,000 went to the American Cancer Society. So two of the biggest events we ever had here at Mercyhurst hockey were, Mike Folger was right in the middle of it. And, he leaves behind a great legacy of, caring for people, respecting people, being inclusive of everybody. And of course, how hard he always worked. He was a friend to so many. He touched so many lives, Jimmy, in so many different ways. And, he will never be forgotten.
Well, a great friend to many. And I'm sure this season will be one that you remember him in. And this season kicks off for Mercyhurst this weekend, Tempe, Arizona, against number 20 Arizona State. It should be a great test for your team. It should be a great battle of two teams that each year now we are learning both compete very well in every game. Rick Gotkin, thanks so much for your time. It's always a pleasure. It's nice to have kicked off the game of the week for the second straight year with you and Mercyhurst. But travel safe and best of luck this weekend.
Well, Jim, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and it's always great to join you guys. Looking forward to a great year of college hockey across the nation.
That's Mercyhurst head coach Rick Gotkin. It's always fun talking with Rick, Jim, and it's a great way to get the season started, a road trip like that, especially with a young squad of 11 rookies.
Yeah, he mentioned that, and I think that coaches still do latch on to that, especially some of the coaches that have been around for longer, and they kind of see these road trips really as opportunities to let these guys get away from the campus, do something doesn't revolve around their own rink, doesn't revolve around the dorms, it doesn't revolve around just being right around the student body. They can get away, they can get into a setting where things are very structured when you think about road trips. There's usually itineraries and stuff like that just helps you, put some definition to how you should be operating your day. So if you can do that on the road, at the same time get around the guys, maybe guys that don't hang out as much because they're on opposite sides of campus, whatever it is, they spend a little bit more time together. I think that it can be very helpful, and I think you see more of these coaches try to throw those trips early in the season for that purpose solely.
It'll be interesting to see this early matchup for Arizona State. They return the great scorer Johnny Walker, but they are without Joey Decord in net, who turned pro. Any thoughts on Arizona State?
Yeah, I think one of the big things for them was getting a transfer in Max Prodzik from Boston University. He had played a decent number of games. He always was kind of in a backup role, but he got the time. He's seen a lot of good high-end college action. That can be very helpful, and I think that will be something that Greg Powers leans on, at least early in the season. He talking to him earlier this week, he has two other goaltenders that he's very happy about that could also be very competitive in the process. But I think he'll start out with Prodzik. We'll see him in a new role in a new school. I don't think that anybody can really compare to Joey Decord. I mean, All-American from a school that was an independent. That independents don't typically get All-Americans on their rosters. So I think there's something to be still looking forward to in terms of the netminder position. But you're right, coming into the question, that might be their biggest question mark coming into this season. So we'll see how that goes. And this weekend will be a very good test right away, because we know that Mercyhurst, a very good, very talented offensive team.
They're both teams that like to fly up the ice and attack, so those should be some entertaining games. Well, when we look around the rest of college hockey, a whole ton of exhibitions and a lot of non-conference games, some interesting ones that we'll get to in non-conference, but strangely enough, a Hockey East contest starting things out. Maine travels to number 7 Providence.
And my guess on that there had to be some sort of a schedule glitch that's, whenever that game was supposed to be played, it just wasn't, easy and functional. So because of that, it gets moved to the first week of the season. Not a big problem, I wouldn't say. I think both of these teams will be ready to go, but it is strange for either of them to be playing league games right out of the chute. For Providence, this is a team that was very good last year, obviously reaching a Frozen Four. They have a lot of holes still in their lineup, lost a lot either to graduation or early departures. Maine, that's a team that took some steps forward last year, but not big enough steps. So, it's every team just wants to come out and get some momentum early, but it's a good test to go on the road for Maine, to have an opponent that is not just some random non-conference opponent for Providence. This counts in the standings. I think for both of these teams, that game will mean a lot.
Bowling Green on Sunday, ranked number 17 in the USCHO poll, is taking on Miami. Former head coach of Bowling Green, Chris Bergeron, behind the Miami bench, longtime assistant Ty Eigner behind the Bowling Green bench.
Very interesting. When you think about, and I'm sure when this schedule has been made for a few years, and when Chris Bergeron put Miami on the schedule when he was at Bowling Green, he didn't think that he would be on the opposite bench by the time that this game came along. But should be interesting. That's a very different way to begin your coaching career at a new school for Bergeron. But at the same time, you've got a Bowling Green team that's coming off a very good season, maybe wanted some more out of it. They were an excellent team last year. But you also have a Miami program that has high expectations. Rico Blasi, a good friend of ours, did not maybe live up to those expectations. That might be the reason he was let go. So there's going to be maybe not the immediate pressure on Chris Bergeron to produce there, but this team, this school wants to be better, and we'll see kind of right out of the gate. That's a good test for them. Bowling Green, a good team that returns some very talented players. That'll be a good weekend. A single game, I guess it's being played on Sunday, but that should be a great game on Sunday.
And lastly, a pair of games. Number 2, Denver. David Carl takes his squad in to take on Alaska for a pair.
You might as well travel as far as you possibly can go in that first game of the year, and that's exactly what Denver will do. But this is a good Denver team. We saw them last year many times in Game of the Week, and just in general how strong they were. I believe that they have the same expectations again this season. But you're going on the road. That's a long trip to take. That we talk about Rick and Mercyhurst and what they're trying to do in terms of maybe get some bonding going on. You have plenty of time to bond. That is not an easy flight. It's not an easy trip. My record probably without layovers is probably about 9 hours up there. So a long jaunt, but it's one that I'm sure that David Carl will look forward to making. And at the same time, I think Alaska looking to find a way to if you pull off an early season upset, especially when you're looking at a program like Alaska that's kind of become pigeonholed over the summer because nobody knows what this funding, nobody knows if there's really a future to this program, to have a game like this and the opportunity to maybe win something like that, that's a big positive.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Game of the Week podcast. Catch us towards the end of the week, every week through the season. Things really get underway next weekend. For Jim Connolly, I'm Ed Trefsker, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.